Hello everyone. Let's take a look at the market after this recent price action with all the tariff fears and stuff. So far, if we take a look at the BTC chart, we can see it's still early in the week, but we can see there's some uncertainty. BTC week down almost to the previous all-time high. We could perhaps see this is some kind of front running. But for now, it's still around the 50 EMA, which needs to hold, in my opinion. We have discussed this several times. It's being perfectly rejected by 81 earlier this week. Again, closing the week above this EMA would be bullish. Otherwise, acceptance below the moving average would be quite bad, to be honest, and would open the door to test with a weekly candle to test the previous all-time high, which is something I wouldn't like to see. But there's still a few days, and in this week we have the CPI, we have the possible US and China agreement. We'll see. I also posted about these RSI trend line. Of course, since it's just Tuesday and the price action is kind of going down now, the RSI is going down as well. But the moment we kind of recapture 81, this could just hold and become the retest in hindsight that we mentioned in a previous video. So we still have to wait. As we said, the moment we lose the RSI and again it gets rejected, it takes time. We saw that in previous occasions. Here the retest was successful, and that's why the new leg came strong, as it was above the EMA, right? But the moment it stays below, it takes quite some time. In fact, it's also below on the monthly, so it surely will take time to get fixed. But let's play level by level. Let's try to reclaim the bullish structure and not call the cycle over, hopefully. So first of all, the goal for this week is to keep the 50 and also the RSI level. I also pointed out in a post that, well, it's obvious here, I don't need to point it out, but the retest of the 50, it is not just once, a one-time thing, you know? It seems like the wicks announce what might come later with a full body candle. So for now, it's not something extraordinary or something to worry about, but all of these retests always look scary because it's like the ultimate area to hold for a bounce. So if there is a bounce, in hindsight, it would look like the obvious levels to bounce, but at the same time, if it is lost, the doors open for very awful looking targets. So we are not there yet. We will analyze that if we ever get there. I also want to quickly take a look at the GOLD-BTC chart, which is something I haven't charted a lot, but I found very good, very interesting stuff. First of all, it seems that being below the 50 EMA on the weekly ensures the BTC is in a bull run, right? We saw that the moment it was completely lost, 2022, it was obviously the bear market, but this was the end of the bear market with this bearish divergence on the weekly. And in fact, we have seen recently in previous videos that between June and December, BTC was printing both on the weekly and the monthly a bullish divergence. So it is interesting that while BTC was printing a bullish divergence against USD, it was also printing, gold was printing a bearish divergence against BTC. So here we can see the relationship between gold and BTC reached these oversold levels back in March 2024 when BTC had locally topped for 8 months, right? Right into the retest and this fake out above the 50, which was September. RSI here, and this was the bottom for BTC after 8 months. Isn't that interesting, right? The correction from mid the summer 2023 ended back in September as well, retesting the 50. We had this recovery until March, right? This was the, I'm saying this like by memory, but this was the 20 something K, 25K, 23K, BTC was around that area, and then it ran up to the 60, 70 something, I think it was. All this EDF, and here is the EDF launch, and the run until March. It is something remarkable. So that brings to the situation we have now. Is this a fake out? Again, what I see is a various divergence, right? This is a hidden one because the price is not making a higher high while the oscillator makes a lower high like this. So regular divergence means a change in the trend, which is the bottom, and hidden ones normally show continuation. And a continuation of this pattern means this. Coming back down, so BTC keep outperforming gold, perhaps in the last leg of this cycle. I wasn't just looking for this, and this is like some bias fitting chart. It's like something I haven't charted. I saw different accounts charting this. I didn't really pay attention to this. So this is the first thing I found, so I think it is relevant, right? So the retest of the 50 coincided with oversold levels. Sorry, the bottoms with oversold levels, and the retest with somewhat overheated RSI, right? So right now, this could be the moment it turns around and BTC outperforms, which is something that aligns with the gold chart, which we pointed some weeks ago. I talk about if no one else was seeing this weakness from gold. I think it pointed out this was, I don't know, mid-March or something. And now, for the first time, we have a weekly, first time since November, the weekly has lost the MA, right? Here, it more or less held it and pushed again, but the bearish divergence was still forming. Very similarly to BTC against the USD pair back in December, and now it is being lost. This was October, November, October, December, January. Okay, gold corrected, BTC ran. I also posted, if you've been following me for a while, that normally the gold leads these breakouts and BTC follows. Is this the moment that BTC follows? If you go to the monthly, we can see something again very interesting. For the first time since recapturing the MA back in October 2023, which was the huge run for gold, right? After this bottom. In fact, we can see gold reclaimed back in November the MA, which started the bull run. This was a fake out in summer. And this, for the first time since 2023, it is going below. It's still early, right? This is the monthly, it's only April 8th. So it's still early, but it's going below the MA. The same way it was going below the weekly. And I pointed out that this looked like a double top on the RSI while price kept rising. And at the same time, level was pretty much similar to the previous top. I think that's enough for some correction, and since then price has fallen 6.7%. Again, this shows that on higher time frames like monthly and weekly, all these oscillators can tell the story, right? Can tell what's next. So that's something we should pay attention to, and I will surely keep updating the gold BTC and especially the gold chart. And I will to also take a look at the BTC dominance chart. Back when we had this week, I posted that this could be some kind of shooting star. And the thing is, even with all this tariff panic, BTC dominance hasn't even retested this, not even with a wick, which is something meaningful. And now it's printing so far some kind of bearish or weak, kind of weekly week. So I found this is interesting, and the weekly RSI, despite the spike, is still going bearish. So what if we found this, which, by the way, again, oscillators don't lie. It happened back in November, early November, Q4 round for alts. Fake out below the 50. So there was continuation, but this continuation is losing steam, like showing exhaustion, like BTC did in December. Again, the 50 can be applied to so many charts, and since it's a high time frame indicator, it's very useful, because once BTC dominance reclaimed and held the 50 in early 2023, which was the confirmation the bottom was in for BTC. This means BTC has been leading the whole bull run, right? So the moment these tanks and perhaps crosses here might happen, this is, you can see this is around May, June. If it crosses decisively, meaning the end of the BTC dominant bull run, I mean the BTC bull run in terms of in comparison with alts, this could lead, perhaps not such a strong move, this could lead to the alt season everybody's waiting for, right? This could happen in a few months, summer perhaps into Q4. That's perfectly possible. This BTC dominant strength is also reflected by the the Ethereum BTC chart. I posted here because someone asked me what I thought and if this could be support. And I think I posted back then that this chart looked atrocious, horrible, right? This support, I mentioned that it wasn't strong enough. I mean, not many tests to become a strong support. However, this opened the door for this double bottom support. Isn't it interesting that BTC dominance is reaching weakness right when Ethereum is getting close to this bottom and is printing this? We can see this like red background which shows very oversold levels, like back this bottom. Isn't that interesting? I think that is aligning pretty well. We could have something like that into late May, June, which was what I pointed out here, for BTC to come back down, BTC dominance, to come back down, June, something like that, to test the MA and perhaps break it below. And that's when ET, the Ethereum BTC bottoms and pushes up. I think there's some confidence there. This is just, as you can see, this is all happening while I'm charting this. This is not something I have really analyzed before. I'm just trying to fit my bias. I'm just testing and checking all charts at the same time, and they are aligning. As simple as that. Again, I find it very relevant that so far BTC haven't even been able to break this level, right, which was in early February. Despite the big drop on SPX, even the big drop in BTC price. I think that is something very relevant, something we should have in mind, right? And finally, I want to take a look at the SPX chart because I posted. I'm not going to look for the tweets. I'm also remembering that I said certain calls or certain analysis simply because I want you to know that I'm not just making things up, that I'm not just throwing shit and see what lands, and then you forget what I said or who said what, right? I just want you to see that we talked about this engulfing candle here around 630, I think it was 6,030, and one only had to just take a look at what happened with engulfing candles, right? They ensure big drawdown, perhaps a test of the week of the 50, but in this case it went below, right? But I mentioned that it could bring the next big high time frame support would be around the previous all-time high. It's been close enough, and I find if this is the bottom, it remains to be seen. But if this is the bottom, it's very similar to the BTC bottom so far, in the sense that it has just a very small fraction. It has front run the previous all-time high, right? It was almost tested. But on the daily, as we mentioned several times, this rejection, and then we discussed the V-shaped recoveries, but this attempt was rejected, and that was the change. And I said there was nothing bullish about this so far, and in fact it opened the door for new lows. There are a couple of gaps that could be closed in the near term, but so far SPX, I think it's very fragile. It's still depending on the news. At the same time, it is very oversold. In fact, it has bounced a bit from these extremely oversold levels, which we haven't seen in years. In fact, I'm going back to the bear market, and not even the bear market, the stock market reached such oversold levels. We would have to go back to the COVID crisis to reach this kind of oversold levels, right? Sorry. That is very interesting. And at the same time, this is on the daily, right? We move to the weekly. The story is very similar. Very oversold levels, not as much as on the COVID, during the COVID, but it is interesting. The good things about these crashes, I posted about that yesterday, is that it completely resets the oscillators very fast. And I mentioned this could be tested. Why not? But I didn't expect, no one did, for it to happen so fast. But if we take a look, even during COVID, the 50 EMA held. During the bear market, the 50 EMA held. So what do I mean by this? If you wanted the conditions for a new leg, a higher leg, now oscillators, and perhaps this is enough as a retest, oscillators are good to go. We don't need any slow process to reset, to come back down to retest. It's been harsh. And these fast corrections bring enough pressure to push back up, especially we see some kind of good news. I mean, markets have been pricing the worst possible outcome for the tariffs. That's my opinion. And this brings and opens the door to V-shaped recoveries. And in return, we can see a prolonged leg because it's been reset. In fact, since October 2023, since the bottom of the bear market, the SPX hadn't broken the MA until now. The moment it broke back in December 2021, it was the start of this whole bear market. Again, oscillators, very useful. Break, and until it's recovered, the bear market isn't over. Again, if you sell here when it breaks, sell here when it breaks, let's say here, 4,400, and you buy when it comes backs up, it's around 4,000. Sorry, I'm not very sharp today either. So you spare all this downtrend. If you sell here, which we mentioned around 6K, you could be buying around perhaps 5K. Why not trying to enter now? If you expect the 50 to hold, the same for BTC. I don't think the economy and all the numbers are as bad as they look. We had this huge bearish divergence that we were pointing out since November, and that has been resolved here with this pretty much bear market drop, 20%. That has been resolved here, in my opinion. Pretty much like this bear market, right? But much faster with no chop in between, right? Like we had here. It's just straight down. But this move was 26% from December to October, pretty much a whole year. And we had this from February to April, 2 months. That's insane. So perhaps that's enough for another push. And I believe that if there is a new push, it could be either rejected by the MA, print lower high, while price makes higher high. Same for BTC, all right? And that could be the triple divergence on the top. We go to the monthly here for BTC. Gonna remove all these drawings for now. We could see again something like this, something like this. Let's say 130, whatever it is, right? And print another lower high. That's perfectly possible. We'll see. But so far, I think it's not looking that bad. The first goal is to hold the 50 weekly EMA by the weekly close. And let's see what the CPI brings. I think it could really push the markets back down if it's sticky. And in fact, I think it is positive for the markets for the CPI to be more or less around consensus or just a little bit below. So the Fed is not forced to cut because everything is going down, right? Some kind of certainty for the markets. I think that's good for now. We don't really need a money printer now, in my opinion. Markets like certainty, and that's what it's really craving for now. In fact, we saw yesterday, I think it was, fake news about a 90-day delay for the tariffs and how it quickly spiked up. So it is really eager for some positive news about, and those news was just a delay. It's not about canceling the tariffs or something like that. It's about just a delay. So that shows the markets want stability. So we'll see. We will update when there's something more relevant, perhaps at the weekly close. And until then, let's see how it all goes. Bye.